Good morning and welcome to the Capital Gang. I am Oscar Semoyam Soke, and this morning we have a few topics for you. We continue with a discussion with Kasita and the traders, and in the studio I have Mr. Joshua Mawelele. You're most welcome to the gang, Mr. Joshua Mawelele.
Thank you so much. Good morning, listeners. I'm happy to join a very peaceful and enlightened gang.
Thank you. Did I pronounce your name right?
Yes,
Joshua Mawelele.
Yes, you're right.
And he's the chairman, Youth Traders, Kasita, Uganda.
Thank
most
you so
welcome
much.
to gang.
Thank you so much.
I have Katesh, Honorable Dixon Katesh Umbwa. I don't know, where did you spend the night, Katesh?
You're asking very difficult questions.
I'm asking very difficult questions again. Because
I hope his family is not
The good thing they are listening. They know where I spent the night.
because you're all kitted up, all cold, but I hope you're well.
Very well.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Ivan Rugamba, good morning. And welcome to gang. We have missed you. We have missed the pickup, but it's good.
Good morning.
He's soon upgrading.
He's soon upgrading. Yeah.
Good morning, Oscar. And, good morning to the listeners.
Okay. Good morning, Honorable Katuntu, and welcome to gang.
Good morning. Please don't ask me who is played.
But you're very smart.
Oh, thank you.
It is a better way of putting it.
He reminds me of the all-white parties.
The all-white party.
Yes.
Because he's dressed, I don't know whether he's coming from one or he's going for one.
Oh, I'm going for one.
He has already warned us. So, Mr. Joshua Mawelele,
Yes.
what's going on?
What's going on with the traders? We agreed that one, we close shops. We close business for a basket of reasons that we've been talking about for almost the last 3-4 years. One, we increasingly expressed ourselves on tax administration by URA, saying it is unfair, it is not resonant with the way we do businesses in the country, and URA needs to adjust some of the things. One of the issues we discussed under tax administration was IFRIS, electronic physical receipt and invoicing solution. And we as traders say that it is coming with a cost to the business. You have to buy a device that can run that system. Now, not any device. If you're going to use a phone, it must be a phone that can at least run Excel sheet to have that system run on it comfortably. So the phone must have a certain level of aspects. So it's not a cheap phone you're going to acquire, or it's not the normal phone you've been using. We're talking about a phone that has more qualities than the normal one. Two, you must have power in your shop, because your phone has to be charged if you're using a phone. If you're using a pad, it has to be charged. If you're using a laptop, it has to be charged. If you're using a desktop computer, you must have consistent power. Now, some of our shops down there actually don't need power to do business. It is a shop, wholesale shop, selling clothes. You open and you go away. Close at 5, so you don't need power. We're also saying that it's an internet-based system, because it has to reconcile with the mother system at URA. So you need the internet. When you go to some of the arcades, even some of the big buildings here in Kampala, as soon as you enter the lift, the network disappears. When you go to the basement, you don't find network. Now, most of our shops and stores are in the basements of these buildings. So if you're going to trade using the IFRIS system, then these must be things you have in your shop. Now, when you look at the supermarkets that have tried to adopt the IFRIS system, they have a number of sales points to be able to handle the clientele. Because when you're doing trade, you must sell and receipt in real time for the client never to be disappointed. Now, when you come to our Chikubo, a typical shop that is a stationary shop, it has 20 clients at the same time. One shouts, I want 20 boxes of markers. Another one says, I want 50 boxes of flip charts. Another one says, I need pens, taraji, I need big. So now you have this basket a shop full of customers shouting whatever they need. Now you need somebody who is going to pick each item on the system, pick the quantity to that it generates the total amount, and then you dash out a receipt. Even when you're in a supermarket, some of these things you go to and they try to click in the product, it refuses. They call the manager who is upstairs and comes to rectify the system. Now, who is going to do that in a shop in Chikubo with all that clientele? Now, when you fail to produce that receipt at that point of time, the client either goes, or if you want the client, you give them the products and they move out of Chikubo. Now, as soon as they exit in Chikubo, there is an enforcement. Armed people who have guns and they're asking for the invoice receipt that you failed to generate on time. And the person is ganged up, brought back to the shop, and they're asking who is the shop owner. When you say I'm the one, there are two things that will happen. The shop is fined for evading tax, 6+ million, or you fail a jail term. Now, you are facing all this because you risked your capital to do business. And this is where the pain comes from. The second one is about enforcement. The way the tax is being enforced, it means that it's also a wrong tax from the start. Because if you have to coerce people to join, then there is a problem that people don't understand about the tax. So we are saying that there should be space to onboard people without enforcing guns within the trade areas. We don't have to turn a cargo ship in the Suez Canal, but we can put smaller boats on the sides and shift one container from the ship and put them on the system so that it can move properly. The other thing that we talked about, why we are closed, was tax justification. During COVID-19, we closed the shop, everybody, because of the SOPs during COVID-19. At that point, the tax on the garments and aprons was 25%. When we opened up, it had gone up to 35%. What was the justification? We don't know. We had closed the shop. Everybody was suffering. We came back with a higher tax to do business. Now, on top of that, they changed from the value of the garments and aprons and made it a kilogram based. Now, imagine somebody who is selling curtains. If you've bought curtains can be cheap but very heavy. The material is cheap but very heavy. Now, if you charge me tax based on kilograms, then there is a problem. No, there are some shirts. You buy a slick shirt, a polyester shirt, that is far expensive than a curtain, but it's light. So if you're charging me based on kilograms, that person is going to do more business than somebody who is carrying heavy material that is cheap. So what was our proposition? That we go back to 25%, because even traders were failing to pay the 25% earlier on. Now, how do you justify going to 35%? So we wanted to go back to 25%. Then we also said the kilograms don't work. Let's go back to the value. Lastly, we had an issue on the trade order. When somebody has an investment license, why do they go down the supply chain, have a wholesale shop, go to retail, and then go to last mile distribution? Then you kill the entire supply chain because you dominate it. One, you have an investment license, so you have tax holidays, you have consumption on power, you don't consume at the same rate like we do. Maybe you have imported trucks that you use in your business, they are tax-free, so you have red and white number plates. And then us who are doing the same business in the supply chain, we pay all our taxes and make sure that we run business legitimately. So the competition is unfair. And what happens, the way it rolls out, is somebody gets an investment license, manufactures the products, then you buy from them. No, we commit our capital, 60 million, 100 million, to these investors and buy their products, bring them to Chikubo. Now, the next time you go to buy, they will tell you, don't worry, we will supply you. Just make the call, make the order, we'll bring the products to Chikubo. When they bring the products to Chikubo, They do the study. Why are you turning over so fast? The next day, they have their own shop opposite you that sells at factory price. So you're going to compete with the manufacturer in the same spaces. Then they start tapping into your clientele. People who buy from you in bulk, they start telling them, we can deliver to you again. So they go retail. And then you even find them in makeshift markets, in moving markets. Now, that's very absurd. There is no country that accepts this kind of trade order. So we want that to be reversed. Lastly, this one becomes very touchy because when we talk to URA about it, they keep saying, that's not our mandate. Tax molarity. How do we spend the taxes at the end of the day? We understand quid pro quo. The taxes I pay won't benefit me directly. Or it may benefit the road that I use accidentally. But there should be a level of tax morality from the legislators, from the MDAs, and we need to see a government that actually wants to enforce that. But what we see on a daily basis, we see a higher appetite for taxes, a higher appetite to spend. Now, what does that mean to the local people?
Now, that is for Katuntu.
What does that mean to the local people?
Not the tax. But moving on,
yes.
I see you're really prepared very well. So you had a meeting yesterday with the president.
Yes, we did.
What happened there?
Now, the meeting was, I would say, was a good meeting from our side, because some of the things that we called for, we said IFRIS should come to a halt until it's made to fit the local businesses. The president went with that. Said, let's halt now, let's halt IFRIS rollout, and we studied it to see how it can be used by the traders. He didn't say it's out, he said, let's put it at a stop for now. He also pronounced himself on the penalties. He said the penalties should be put out, should be halted for now, because what was happening is when you roll into IFRIS, and it so happens that they discover you are supposed to pay 20 million in taxes, then they will do 20 millions times the number of years you existed. So that becomes your indebtedness in terms of taxes. So he said the penalties should stop. He also said there are some things he couldn't pronounce himself on about the 35, put it down to 25, and also changing from kgs back to value. He said he has to consult the technocrats. And he asked that we give him up to 24th of April. He will have a meeting with the technocrats and be able to come up with a solution. And when he gets the solutions, he will again meet the traders, all of us in Kololo on the 7th of May. So that's what we came with from the president. And the bottom of it was an agreement that we open shop.
Yes. But this is the second time you've met with the president, and the second time he's saying hold on IFRIS. So this time, how do you know that IFRIS will be halted?
We want to trust the president that he understands now, because many of the times the stakeholder engagement process about the taxes lacks. And when we get the opportunity to go to that level, because everybody was actually, we had interactions throughout with the entire chain, and everybody was saying, the last call is a fountain of honor, and we want to trust him to be able to make that last call to change things. We're not saying remove away most of these things. We're saying, can they fit the business?
Okay. Honorable Katesh, yes. You are the author of this system. John Musinguzi is suffering with it. You are in Parliament, but you started the system. What can be done?
Well, that's a very interesting description. But I want to say that, the country is grappling with a problem. We have a very big budget deficit. I think our budget is about 50, now it is going to over 50 trillion. Out of that budget, we are able to mobilize as a country, at least for the estimates of next year, about 31 trillion. That's the estimates I have had. And out of the 31 trillion expected to be collected from revenue, 25 trillion goes to a vote called treasury operations. Honorable Abdul Katuntu is familiar. Treasury operations means it includes interest costs that we pay, about 8 trillion, and amortization of debt is going to be around 17 trillion. Amortization means it includes external debt, the principal of about 3 trillion, redemption of domestic securities around 12 trillion, the BOU. So that 25 trillion out of the resource goes basically for servicing and payment of debt. So the situation now that we find ourselves in as a country is that our GDP growth is estimated to be around 6%. Out of that GDP, the money that Ugandans pay that should be making money, because money makes money, is going for the payment. And so government is stuck in the middle. You have 4 million taxpayers, about 4 million on the register. You have a huge population to service, and then you don't have money because what you are collecting, you are paying debt and you are borrowing. If our GDP was able to grow, double digit for 12%, 10%, naturally, there would be a normal growth in revenue, maybe up to 35 trillion or so. So that is now the dilemma. So in one of the strategies of government, they came up with the domestic revenue mobilization strategy. And among the many strategies, that is the origin of IFRIS. To try and expand, because revenue have direct and indirect revenue. The bigger majority of us, other than those who are directly registered as taxpayers in the 4 million category or so, we contribute taxes through indirect means. Even my daughter, when she takes Lucozade from the supermarket, she has paid VAT indirectly. So the bigger catchment point for government is indirect taxes in form of VAT. And that's how this system, I think, was brought to try and get everyone into the net of VAT, especially. Because the ground was not leveled, you have people who are not paying, who are suppressing VAT, those who are trading in invoices, etc. And yet, they are in the same market. So that was the origin, and I'm sure you have interacted with the CG as explained. Now, of course, the dispute, and it's been rolled out, the dispute here, it seems to be perhaps on the method of implementation. Because the supermarkets have issues. For example, if a supermarket is selling, let me give an example of the one family example you might be familiar with, a bottle of grain-fed dish in a supermarket. Oscar, if you go and buy it,
you can say a bottle of water.
But why are you looking at Oscar and say a bottle of water?
I'm saying I'm looking for a familiar
Which
territory.
is familiar.
Yes.
Which is familiar with.
No, we could say a bottle of water, and you look at Abdul Katuntu.
Now, if you go to a supermarket and you buy it,
That bottle,
you will pay the tax called VAT on it, and perhaps excise. But if you go to Chikubo, someone who is not on IFRIS, you will buy it cheaply because he's not registered, he is not obligated, and so you'll find that while you might pay 300,000 in a supermarket, in Chikubo you might buy it at 250. So now the question is, how does the supermarket survive amidst a wholesaler who is selling cheaply but is not compliant? So the first principle is, for all the businesses, one of the major issues that as a country must achieve is we must have equity in taxation. Now, specifically for Chikubo, I think the government needs to understand the business model of Chikubo. Because when you are going for people, you need to understand how they operate. They have some terminologies which are not very familiar, like Okuyiriva. All those things need to be studied.
Okay, what is Okuyiriva?
I actually don't know.
Now, hustling, yes, it's hustling, yes.
Okay.
Pick here, take there. Have you ever been to downtown and say, I'm looking for the phone? Then he says, I don't have this model, but give me 5 minutes. He runs and brings it. So the understanding of a business model of Chikubo is very, very important, so that you can understand tactically how to infiltrate and have these people in the net. And I think that is where the struggle could have come, because they appeared even to Parliament. We looked at them, and I have shared with them that, number one, the general concern about IFRIS is unfounded. But the specific concerns about IFRIS and its implementations have some merits of consideration. So I do not agree with the principle that no, IFRIS must stop, we don't need it. That one, I think it would be very unfair. However, what I want to agree is look at the specifics. For example, the issue of penalty, we all agree, we discussed even in Parliament, that the penalty provision that was approved in the bill is a bit high-handedness.
Even the amount itself.
Yeah, if you
6
fail
million.
to issue a receipt, because a trader might not be responsible for power blackout. If power breaks out and is not able to issue an invoice, perhaps for one reason or the other, of 10,000, the penalty is 6 million. That one, I think we have to revise it as Parliament and make it commensurate. Number two, they raised an issue of VAT threshold, which we have also looked at, 150 million per year. It has been there for more than a decade, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It also has to be looked at by Parliament. Number three, there is a silent one, which I do not think they have properly understood, because our friends here, sometimes the pressure has been too much. So the consolidation of ideas have been... there is an issue of how do we compute VAT? Because the issue of 6% withholding tax on VAT, I think, is one of the biggest issue that has been creating stress. That VAT is accounted for when it becomes due. When you have output minus input, you compute the VAT payable. So Parliament, Minister of Finance brought a law and he introduced 6% withholding tax on VAT. I think they borrowed the provision of income tax. And that one is a very, very big issue which we have to deal with, Parliament. Because if you withhold my VAT at output, instead of paying it to me, you deduct 6%, moreover on the gross amount. If you deduct it on 2nd of a month, Oscar, you are creating about 3 problems. Number one is that you are supposed to keep that money and take it to URA by 15th of the other month. So you can actually use my capital for more than 30 days, okay? And deny me the cash flow, money to use. Number two is that you take that money and it is an assumption that I do not have an accumulated offset on which to use that output. And so you might find that I've actually overpaid because you have not calculated how much I'm supposed to pay, but you took 6% directly on growth. So that one is another specific matter that as policy we have to deal with as a government. So for me, that's why I say the traders must be fair. Number one, you need to see that IFRS is implemented, but tactically to cater for balancing. Because even within the trading community, imagine, my friend here, if you are in Chikubo, you are you are registered for VAT, or you are in IFRS. You go and buy from a non-registered person.
This David
for
sent me a
resale.
message. This one.
Then you also you buy from a non-registered. So on one side you have input VAT,
Yeah.
on the other side you don't have. So when you are doing
But the system
calculation-
has decided that you the other one had VAT as well.
Yes. So when you are doing the calculation, you find that even in the trading community, the ground is not leveled. So for me, Oscar, the main issue should be, first of all, how does government understand the business model of Chikubo, and then introduce this tactically. Number two, we deal with the issues of the penalties and the laws. We do a cleanup, and we are in the process of enacting bills. Our committee, I think if the Ministry of Finance is listening, they should be able to, even at this stage, introduce some amendments in this process, so that as Parliament we can help on the situation. It will not only help ease the tension, but it would actually work in favor of URA to realize more taxes.
Okay.
And then finally, basically trying to understand the issues around implementation, the costs involved, issues of sensitization, issues of compliance, so that everybody is able to survive while supporting the efforts of the other issues. I think maybe we'll touch on them
as we go on.
along.
Ivan.
Thanks, Oscar. I think this is a very important conversation. I think you have a collective, you have a productive conversation, or at least a conversation about the productive sectors of our economy. So we're no longer discussing expenditure, but we're looking at production and resource mobilization. And I want to start by thanking the traders for showing agency, for not being passive actors, for showing agency in this. I like the presentation of the youth leader for Kasita, because you can tell that they have a clear appreciation of they are on top of their perspective of what their concerns are. But it's interesting hearing from him and from Katesh here. Katesh has just told us that we have more than half of our tax revenue going to debt servicing. I think that there is a big problem there as a country. If you have more than half of your taxes going to your revenue collected going to debt servicing, then it beggars the question, how are we utilizing debt? Because I think debt should not be a problem. If you're saying, because debt in simple terms means you are able to live off future income. If you're borrowing internally, you'll be able to live off your future income, which should not be a problem. But it becomes a problem if that debt is not prudently utilized. And I think that at Parliament, especially in light of the last few months conversations we've been having about our responsibility, our resource utilization, from Parliament to the executive to the others. These are not two independent conversations, and I forget his name. Joshua here pointed to it, the morality of tax, or how you're utilizing these taxes. Because if this debt, most of our debt is borrowed to finance big infrastructure projects which are supposed to have a catalytic effect on the broader economy, and to be able to ease, for example, the cost of being the business, facilitate business growth, and transition from informal to formal sectors and all of this. But we have a very poor record of project implementation and the successive visions. When you look at Vision 2040 and the national development plans, as a country, we are indicted for our dismal performance on project implementation. you realize that for every earning year we have not even a 20% performance, 20% in terms of implementing projects on time. That means if you don't implement projects in time, it means you're paying interest, high interest on these borrowed loans, yet they are not doing what they are supposed to do. So you are accumulating debt, while that debt is not delivering the public goods and services it is supposed to deliver. And then you have your tax revenue, which should actually be doing those things, now going to debt servicing. So you realize we are in a very dangerous cycle. So even as we have a conversation on tax administration and resource mobilization, we must simultaneously have a conversation on resource utilization. First of all, our public expenditure. Do we have our priorities right? We must be sure that we have our priorities right as a country in terms of public expenditure, but also to realize that this money is not charity. We are living on our future incomes, so it means we are committing our future income to certain projects, and we better deliver on those projects, because if we don't, we'll be paying interest on those incomes, and yet we don't have the goods they should have financed. So, and this is a conversation for the Honorable Katesh and the Honorable Katunt, who are the policymakers here, and those in government. Because if like Joshua said, if these goods were being done, then there could be the government would have legitimate expectation on the part of the traders to also rise up to meet the resource needs of the country. That is one point. The second point is that if we have such a big revenue shortfall or budget deficit, as Honorable Katesh pointed out, what are the other areas we can look into to boost our tax base? It is true that the informal sector and the Chikobo, like they explained, has maybe been paying a lesser share of tax responsibility. But if you're to raise the tax threshold of the informal sector, then you must also give them incentives, or you must also give them the sort of public incentives that accrue to the formal sector. You see, there is a reason why the Chikobo businesses cost or price their goods cheaply compared to the formal sector, and there is an unwritten understanding between government and the informal sector that, look, if you look at the paved roads in Nakasero, in Intinda, in the top, business, areas where the supermarkets reside, where the big businesses happen, to those that are on IFRIS and who pay a fair share of tax, they also enjoy a basket of public amenities and goods that the Chikubo people do not enjoy. For example, there is a reason you will go here to Cafe Javas here and not go to Shauri Yako, because there is less inconvenience here. There is good parking. There is the public toilets are functioning. The sanitation the facilities are clean, and all of that. So if government is going to the Chikubo business to say, we need you to up your tax threshold, then it must accompany that with also a set of goods, of incentives to say, look, once you increase this tax, then we are intervening to do this, to clean the sewage in this parks,
flooding,
the flooding,
parking,
the car parking, the congestion, so that even Honorable Katesh and Abdul Katunt can quickly go to downtown and buy things and don't have to concentrate their income and don't have to concentrate their incomes in Ntinda and the upper business echelons, and these are the biggest income earners. So if they are paying their money
get
to
that
the
suit for
exactly. So they should be able to go get their business suits in Chikobo. There is a reason they don't go there, because of the congestion, because public amenities are dysfunctional and all of those things. So government must not just come to say we need you to up your tax threshold. They must come with an accompanying incentive to say we will do this and this. Then finally, for me, the question is: so even as we look at the informal sector to up their tax threshold, what are the other areas we can look into? Because the informal sector is only a convenient target. We know them, we see where they trade, we do this. But there are those people who avoid tax, who are written or tucked away in books. The Commissioner General of URA said, I think this was in the 2022-2023 budget, I think last year, said URA was going to lose 2.8 trillion in tax holidays and tax exemptions. This is probably even more money than you are going to collect from this informal informal sector, and yet these are the big players. These are the big guys. So are we sure that URA has exhausted or the other avenues? Because if you're looking at the biggest tax contributors, these multinational companies and big businesses surely need to pay their fair share of tax before we can go to the loan people, to the informal businesses and the juakali businesses in town. And there is a good way to compute these tax holidays, because I know that the holidays and exemptions are part of the incentive regime for investment, but we need to assess the effectiveness of these holidays and exemptions. How many of the exempted businesses and exempted businesses over the last decade have grown to join the bracket of the biggest income taxpayers over the last years? Because every time we talk about the biggest taxpayers, we talk about the business that have been here for 20 years. We talk about the breweries, the Nile breweries. We talk about the Mukwano. We talk about the Madvan. We talk about the guys who have been here for the last, say, 20 years. So the people who have been enjoying the tax holidays and exemptions over the last decade, where are they? How come they are not measuring or coming into the bracket of the biggest income taxpayers? So we must assess our incentive regime for investment to be able that we are not being to ensure that we are not being ripped off by these multinational, because these businesses are very experienced in tax avoidance, in hiding their procurement and business model in tax havens in other countries and all of this. So even as we up our systems to implement IFRS, we must also be able to up our capacity to track the business models of these investors we bring in, and to be sure that they are paying their due in terms of tax, even as they enjoy the amenities or the incentives here that we give them in terms of free land and tax holidays back home. That way we'll be able to convince the people, the Juakalis and the people in the informal sector to say, look, everybody in the tax chain is paying their fair share, and you also need to raise the
Abdu?
They say caught between a rock and a hard place. First of all, as a country, Katesha has ably explained it, we are in a real crisis about revenue mobilization. The economy is not doing as it should be doing. Some of us who are looking at those figures, really we get worried. The trend of this economy, and the area we find a way of mobilizing internal revenue to sustain our economy, the better. Whatever Kasita and their friends, I think they have some sister organization, have put on the paper, it is very legitimate. Very legitimate. But, and I want to emphasize, there is not what they have put on the paper, which is also biting them. But they can't dare say it, unfortunately. And I'll give you an example. I'm sure, I don't know whether you're landlord or your tenant.
Oh boy.
It is common knowledge that many tenants have been told to get receipts of the rate which they are not paying. It is down happening there. I'm sure you know that. Yeah. Yes. But that sort of thing can never be on paper by anybody. That you have these tenants, they are paying 3 million shillings, but the receipt they are given is 1 million shillings. It's common knowledge. Because we don't have to hide this. If we must address the challenges, let us address them. So when you introduce this system, it will affect a certain section of business people who could have been profiteering from this sort of lack of an efficient tax collection system. However, will the business say this is our problem? No. they'll go to power, they'll go to water. The very legitimate issues my brother Joshua here has put on paper. And he'll go public about it. He'll be with the president and talk about it. That is okay. To me, whatever you've presented can be addressed. For example, the issue about the penalties. I think we did it, but it is unreasonable. And it is causing a lot of inconveniences to them and so on. And then the some, and I want to emphasize the word some URA agents who may not be acting in good faith use it for purposes of squeezing the business people. So those can be addressed. And the Commissioner General was here on Saturday, and he really tried to explain, if they are bad apples, bring it to the system's attention, they can handle it. The issue about internet, I mean, how can that not be an issue? Because is the internet 24 hours where they operate from? It's not there. So what is government doing to make sure that there is internet at their premises all the time, so that when they're invoicing, they are receipting, this is captured real time? Or will you come as an agent and say, by the way, what happened here, therefore you need a penalty? But the problem was not the businessman, it was the system or the government's unavailability to provide internet at that point. So to me, Oscar, the issues Joshua talks about can be addressed. There is no doubt about it, and they should be addressed. However, we should also try issues of integrity. I think, Joshua, you people as businessmen leaders, you need to address that issue. Because, one, you are undercutting some of your colleagues who are paying their fare of the tax. And a good example is a supermarket which is invoicing. The product will be slightly more expensive than yours. So you are making this guy who is paying his fare of the tax run into problems because you are dodging it. Two, this thing about value-based, yes, it is the trade order, but can you also look at us as the ultimate consumers? And I gave this example last week. If, for example, Mandela was okay, he need to give Cartoon to transporters, the business to transport his product, then Joshua, the wholesaler, then Ivan, the retailer, and so on. The three layers in that chain will also try to earn a profit. The product will certainly be slightly more expensive than if, for example, this producer just brought it to an outlet and given it to a retailer without retailing, without hawking. Because the issue of hawking is correct. I agree with you. Some of these people cannot be hawkers. That's wrong. However, don't say we need to overpack all of your business along the chain so that at the end of the day, the product becomes more expensive, and maybe the producer, the primary producer of that product, is worried he'll have less sales because his product is now more expensive. Along the chain, there are very many people who now are trading in his product. Yes, you are doing well as a transporter. He's doing well as a wholesaler. Retailer, yes, you have no choice. You need a retailer to get to the producer. But all of you are earning profits on my product. And that product will eventually be slightly expensive. So you need to address that as you call for more people along the chain. Tax morality. We can say this until the cows come home. You put it, tax morality, I don't know. You see, every citizen would want to know what his tax is doing. And that has nothing to do with ERA. It has everything to do with the Katesh and my brother, young brother Peter, who has just walked in. They are the people, and myself. Because we utilize how do we utilize your taxes? Some of the issues you are raising, taxes are being imposed, but you don't see the facilities, which Ivan is talking about. For example, you go to Chikubu. Are those roads in order? Do you have street lights? There are things which should be common sense. Unfortunately, common sense is not as common as the word describes it. But the government, us as policymakers, we must make sure that taxes are being used, in a way that the taxpayer will say, this is my tax. I'll give you an example. In the Nordic country, they have the harshest taxation regime. Almost 60% of your taxes are gone. Of your income is gone in taxes. But all the facilities you would want, you don't need to get a kid from Karamoja to Budo. There is a school in Karamoja, or in Teso, where Peter comes from, which is as good as in Miriango. There is a hospital in Kabong, which is as good as Rubaga. You get it? So there are things which have to, as policymakers, as people who contribute to policy in this country, must look at it again. Therefore, where do we invest the funds? And that's what Ivan was talking about, debt. Debt is never a problem. I must repeat. But where do you invest it? That's the most important. I'll give you an example as I go off the microphone, Oscar. Today, one of our cash cows should be tourism. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel. It is happening all over the place. Even countries like deserts, they are having millions and millions of tourists going there. They have turned the desert into some paradise. We are here gifted by nature. Whatever nature can give, it has given. And what do? We pin the water. We do what? Where people should be flying in to see this beautiful lake Victoria and the River Nile and hotels around the Nile and so on. So, where are we investing the taxes or even the debts we are contracting? If we don't invest where, this should be like a business, Oscar. Invest where you are going to make more money. Invest where you're going to grow the economy. And once the economy grows, this taxation business, I'm telling you, people will spend. The more people spend, the more taxes you collect. The biggest tax component is actually consumption tax. The rich one will drive a Mercedes-Benz like Oscar. I mean, and they don't have...
We know the Mercedes-Benz driver here.
You get it? They'll drink the other water he's talking, Kateshi was talking about. They'll put on the best clothes, they'll wear the best perfume, they'll do everything. And the more they purchase, the more taxes they'll pay. So you need to grow the economy. Once you grow the economy, taxation it doesn't become complicated. People are lining up in the shops every day to consume. Voluntarily. You even mobilize your family. Can we go and pay tax? Because you have gone to spend money. You spend money, you pay tax. Take these ladies. They even have to paint their lips red. You get it? And they are paying taxes. Their nails. They even put some funny, they are not funny, maybe they are beautiful, okay. Yeah. Beautiful things on their nails and so on. And happily paying the what? Tax. So taxation is all about consumption, grow the economy, increase consumption. Some of this conversation we will not be having it at all.
Yes. Just before we go for a break, Henrik Uenda sent a question about double taxation and so on, for example, a bottle of water. So, Katesh, you've worked it out. How does that go?
Yeah, I want to... You see,
what was the question?
If you are buying a bottle of water from Chikubo supermarket, it has already paid 75% uniformly of that tax.
You see, okay, let's give an example of a product that is imported by either a supermarket or someone from Chikubo.
By Joshua.
When they all come, they will pay at importation all the taxes. Okay? So assuming they have all paid VAT, the product was 100 shillings, they have all paid 118. Okay? I have not included the other taxes that might be. So the product lands at 118 for each. Now, if one is registered, he is supposed to charge VAT of 18% at the time of sale. So if each one of them has a margin of, say, 25 shillings, so the product will be 100 plus the margin.
That's the 18.
That's no, plus the 25
and 18.
And then they sell. So once they sell, one will charge, another one will not charge. Now the one who has charged, of course, he will now offset the input minus output. But because he has computed VAT, you'll find that his product, he will actually sell at around 147.5 shillings.
More expensive.
While the other one, who is undercover, will actually sell around 145, but he has no obligation of taking anything there. So what I want to say is that there is no doubt, even within the traders, that the first thing that government has to do is to level the ground. That one is in everyone's interest. But something that Honorable Katun touched, which is very important. The fact of the matter is that there is a lot of stress on tax in the country. And what I told my colleagues in the ministry is that, you see, if we are looking at tax policy, number one, we have this growth that we have talked about of GDP of 6%. We must be able to break it down to know which sectors are growing, because that's a consolidated growth. So you might have 6%, but manufacturing is growing at 12, industry is at 5, wholesale and retail is at 6, agriculture is at... So you have to break down the sectors and know which one is growing, and then which one is employing more Ugandans. Then you have to look at now the revenue. So it is like akin to a cow. If you have 100 cows in a kraal, you have a target of getting 200 liters of milk. You have to know which cow gives you 40 liters, which one gives you 20. If a cow is sick and it has been giving you 40, how do you treat it to make sure that it comes back and gives you the liters that you need? Even as the time of milking now, how do you put it in a mood that it gives you the what? So the issue is that we must look at the economy, look at the sectors which are stressed, which would be growing higher and giving us more revenue, and make an effort as government to invest in them. Otherwise, we are in a dire economic situation when you look at the numbers.
Yes, we're going to stop for a break. Good time to welcome Honorable Peter Ogwang. Welcome to Capital Gang. You are looking very, very sporty. I don't know if you had an early morning football match.
Thank you, Oscar, and the entire Capital Gang. Of course, I'm very grateful that I'm back to Capital Gang again. Yeah,
this time we are putting you in the hot seat.
I am the number one sports person in the country. So if I don't look sporty, then who else is meant to be? So I'm from Namboole anyway.
Indeed.
I thank you.
Capital Gang on 91.3 Capital FM. The Capital Gang on 91.3 Capital FM.
Come back from the break. This is the Capital Gang. We're going to close out this topic, Mr. Joshua Mawere. I see President Museveni sent tweeted, X'd your conversations with him. The 4 issues, as you put them, he did. And then he also asks you to answer a question. Do you want to build our country, Uganda, or other countries by trading in goods produced by them? Must we continue to hemorrhage the little that we have made through agriculture? He says agriculture. I don't know if we tax anything in agriculture. But there you go. So how would you wish to conclude this discussion, Mr. Mawere?
Our biggest call is what constitutes investment? How do you move a Ugandan from being a retailer towards industrialization?
There was an Jogio again on X says traders don't want IFRIS because simply it exposes their businesses to URA, and therefore they would no longer be in position to underreport their returns. It's a system being used everywhere in the ESC, in Kenya and Tanzania successfully.
That's correct. So, number one, saying that if we want to move Ugandans towards investment, so we have a wider tax base, then we need to make sure that these Ugandans increase their marginal propensity to save. How do you do that? The tax must be reasonable. It must leave Ugandans with some money to save so they can invest. Then we're also saying that tax intensity on a smaller tax base will kill everything. We need to go extensively, widen the tax base. How do we widen the tax base? Let's look at other people who are not being taxed. People are moving out of trade and they are selling out everything, and you go to unit trusts in insurance. Put your money there or buy a treasury bond, you charge 15%, doing nothing. Your money is there, so you don't employ, you don't hustle to pay taxes, everything is sorted. 15%, you go to sleep, 200 million, go to sleep, and you get income. People are moving to other countries. The importation from Tanzania has grown in the last 3 years. What we're importing from Tanzania to Uganda. But simply, people have moved from Uganda to Tanzania. And then they're pushing back things. We have different discussions with other countries. They're saying, come. So we are saying, we want to trade, we want to make this country work. We don't want to run away. And this is why we're putting up this pressure. So we're in support of the president. We want this country to work. We don't want it to fail and not making it a market. We want to produce, but how do we produce? Let's be supported to grow on the chain. Then lastly, what I want to say is that we can look at other things apart from taxes. We can harness diaspora remittances. There are people outside this country who are working so hard. Send back money to this country to construct a house, to start a small business for the mother. If government is very serious, because this is what African countries are doing, they're looking at the diaspora remittances, putting them together and talking to these people and saying, look, we have a problem in electricity. Instead of sending this small money to your mother to construct a house, send it to the government, we harness it and invest into electricity. So you can have shares or remittances from electricity as part of the investment. Now, in Uganda, in 2021, diaspora remittances were about 1.3 billion shillings. The same year, we approved a loan of 1.6 billion shillings for Karuma Dam. Now, if we had rightly talked... dollars. If we had spoken rightly to the diaspora remittances, we would have funded Karuma Dam by 1.3 billion shillings. And the rest would have been loan. So we're talking about reducing the debt. There are so many ways we can look at. The capital market is not functioning. I think the capital markets can be enhanced. I don't know why we don't have these discussions. We can bring more smaller businesses on to get a lot of funding and make things work. So I think there's a holistic approach we need to look at in this arena. But otherwise, as traders, we are happy so far, and we think that we will get more remedies.
You're waiting for 7th May.
Yes.
We should promote you to become MP for traders.
A quick one as he closes. He has mentioned very interesting things, and I have said this on different forums, that one of the problems we have is that our private sector development is a bit fragmented and not... when you go to some countries, you find a very strong chamber of commerce that brings together all these associations and comes up with very well-researched proposals that help the government to grow the economy. The problem we are seeing is that most of them are reactional. The manufacturers, private sector foundation, Kasita. In Chikuba alone, you have like more than 5 associations. Arcadas, what? So government, maybe the Ministry of Trade, needs to have a discussion so that all these ideas are brought together. Because when we were doing consultations now for policy, you see people coming, but they are reacting to what government has proposed. No one is bringing ideas on how government can grow the economy to bring in more revenue. So I think the fragmentation needs to be seriously addressed.
And the business community has changed. Yeah. Many of these guys are really red.
Yes,
it's no longer the when we used to have people who don't even know how to write their names and so on. You've got guys with a master's degree; they are big professionals and they're in businesses. So they should be stakeholders right from the beginning.
Yes, and I give you an example. When I used to be the commissioner, we used to go to Arusha to discuss regional policies. Many times I would find myself with Moses Ogwapus. Moses Ogwapus, a commissioner, by then he was an assistant commissioner tax policy. And you start by being the senior officials, then the PS has not come, one of you becomes the PS, then the PS is finished, they are supposed to report to the Council of Ministers, then the minister has not come, then you mobilize one of you gets an undelegated role, you come up with policies. But the delegation from Kenya, you would find Kenya Association of Manufacturers present with their ministers. They have coalesced. They are looking for, they do what they call national conspiracy. You look at how do you keep your advantage as a country, and we would even spy to know what are they planning.
Kenya is a unique case because the politicians are actually the businessmen.
You would have a huge delegation.
Here, the politicians
are the landlords, the ones you were talking about on the receipt.
So you would find our delegation is a two-man delegation. Even some ministers are not interested. The private sector is on its own. Even the private sector, even among the manufacturers.
Just as we go off, I see Augustine Ruzindana has been having a discussion on Twitter, on X, formerly Twitter, on the cows and IFRIS.
Yes.
And because some people are saying, how come now those cows are not taxed and so on? And he's been saying, actually, you may find that they are making losses.
Yeah,
so
it's possible.
That's another area maybe that needs to be looked into, but he's saying it would not be worth it. So there's, as all of you have been saying, there's a need to get stakeholders into
absolutely.
The whole discussion.
In the whole process of policy development.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Joshua Mawere, the Chairman, Youth Traders Kasita, Uganda. Thank you for your very ample explanations here on Gang. We shall invite you back that weekend after the president has spoken. But from the way I see he questioned, I think anyway, let me not predict.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being here.
The question was a valid point for them to answer. And I think they should grapple with it.
Yeah. So, moving on to the next topic, Honorable Peter Ogwang in the hot seat. Namboole.
Well, first of all, I would like to begin by thanking you and the entire country for the support they have given in as far as the renovation of the national asset Namboole is concerned.
They have not given you support. They are annoyed.
let me answer that.
They are annoyed.
Even they are being annoyed is support because they need us to do the work. That's all support, because if they were not annoyed, then it means that everything is normal. So by the mere fact that someone is not happy, it means that he wants us to do something to make the facility function. So for me, I welcome all that support they have given us and the expression. And I want to say this, that we are not sleeping. As of me, myself, I think as of last evening, I went to my house at around midnight. And this morning, I remember calling Patricia by 8 a.m. I was back to Namboole, and even now I'm from Namboole. But first to the country that this afternoon, we have a second team of the inspectors coming back to carry out an inspection to assess our preparedness for purposes of hosting a game, the two games at home. That's on 5th of June and 9th of June. Then, of course, as a country, we are given hosting rights with the Kenya and Tanzania to host what we call CHAN in September. And as a country, we have one stadium which we are meant to use for that particular competition, and that's still Namboole. So as far as government is concerned, I also want to confirm that the long-awaited 17.6 billion has finally reached to the contractor's account, and what we had agreed with colleagues in Parliament, they gave me a deadline of about 2 weeks to sort out a few of the issues which had been identified by the inspectors whom we invited for purpose of them coming in to see whether there's progress or there's no progress. But in a special way, I want to thank the president of the country, because after that letter came from CAF, we had all to run to him and ask for his intervention to allow the Confederation of African Football come back and carry out a second inspection, which is going to take place at 4 p.m. today. The other one, which of course I've been having from Parliament, was, again, I want to thank Parliament so much for raising some of those pertinent issues. The issue of the Pioneer Bus Company, which has been in our parking for quite some time. I want to confirm that the proprietor of Pioneer Bus Company, as of this morning, before I left about 10:30 to leave Namboole, has so far taken out 18 of the 100 buses, and he continues to take them out before.
They can't. Do they move? Are they?
No, they are using.
They are towing them.
Then they're using another truck. They pick them, load them into a truck, then they drive them away. He's using about 3 trucks. So that also, for me, from my point of view as the owner of the land, it was one of the big impediments which was affecting for parts of the car park.
Thank you for that brief, Honorable Gwang. Now let's go backwards a little bit. So, to begin with, what works were ongoing, and how was that funded?
First of all, in terms of the works, I want to say this, that
because you've had, is it 3 contractors?
No, I want to put this clearly.
Yes.
We signed a contract with the Ministry of Defense and Veteran Affairs, and specifically that's Engineering Brigade.
And that was the second contractor?
No. I want to ask you to request you to give me time.
Okay.
Namboole, ever since the renovation started, we have signed one contract. That is with the Ministry of Defense and Veteran Affairs, and specifically Engineering Brigade. We have had a consultant, that is the Ministry of Works and Transport. So that project of the renovation of Namboole is entirely one government project, which is government working on within government other departments. 2, the project cost in far as its renovation was concerned is 97 billion for phase 1. And that is also another issue, because I see too many people talking a lot on X on what it is. The people expect us to do work of maybe 400 billion within one phase. And I want to say this. As far as works are concerned on phase 1, we have reached 90% of the works. The other parts are entirely now fixing the deliveries, which were part of the items which had been within the contract being shipped from the rest of the country. That's overseas, because part of that equipment is not in the country. And that's what is now happening. So the other one, which of course...
Don't leave it just yet. So you have a contractor, and they've started work, and 90% is nearly completed.
True.
But were you not able to see that the work is not good enough?
First, I want to put this clear. There is no work which I can say it is showed here, and that is the problem we have with our people.
No, it is not our people. It is an inspector came and said the work is not good enough.
I am
so
happy.
I'm putting to you,
Oscar,
were you not able to see that the work is not good enough?
I am happy that first I want to differentiate between the two. The inspection was in terms of meeting the CAF international guidelines, not show the work. And I'm going to give case studies.
But also the work was being done so that you meet the international standards.
And listen,
so they are not separate.
Listen to me. Okay. For instance, I want to say the CAF officials, when I invited them to come, because I also want to clarify that it's me who invited them, because the contractor was reaching the final phase of the completion of the work. I'd wanted to make sure that whatever is acceptable in terms of standards are put in the stadium. So out there, people feel the CAF came on their own. No, it's me, we invited them. Number 2, they came and told us, okay, you have a football pitch, excellent. Where are the goalposts? For them, they needed to find a goalpost already standing. I took them to the stores because I was there. But for me, I didn't know, according to their method of work, that they needed a goalpost to be put on the goal, on the pitch. Where are the goals? You don't put their wooden one. Number 2, they told me, where are the benches? The benches are there in the store, and I took them and showed them the benches. But for them, they were...
For the coaching staff?
Yes. These are the facts which they were picking in there.
Happen. They
Number
can walk
3,
away.
Where are the floodlights? And I want to be honest, at the time of the inspection, I had not delivered the floodlights to the stadium. And I told them, according to the bill of lading, the floodlights are meant to be here on this date. Of course, for them, they were ticking. Where is the media tribunal? These are the issues. Number 2, I told them, okay, according to the guidelines we had gotten, the media tribunal was meant to be on the west side of the stadium. To them, they said no. Where are the dressing rooms? The dressing rooms, according to that plan, are on the east side of the stadium. And that is a 1972 plan. But as of today, where the VVIP sit, that's where the the dressing rooms are, that's where the media tribunal is. For them, they said, this is not the way where it's meant to be. So for me, what could I do with the structural design of 1972? I break it down. They advise me, please, to ask what we are proposing. Put it here. Put it here. And whatever they picked, this is now what we are addressing. And we are happy. They are coming to check on what we have solved, whether it is in tandem with what they want. Okay. And after that, that's when now they say, okay, we have given you a certificate of clearance to host the game. They did not say that there's a structural design which is a problem. No. I want someone to quote me because I have the report which captures. The other one, of course, because of there was still active construction works there in the site, particularly on the running track. They told me, can we have the running track covered? Which I want to say Namboole is a multi-sport. We are talking about football, we are talking about athletics, we are talking about rugby. They are all meant to be used now in that one running area within the main stadium. The same to outside. So those are the issues which CAF inspectors, and I want to say, we picked them in good faith, because if we don't address those issues, they definitely cannot be able to approve the stadium, because they're the owners of the game of football.
Yeah.
I thank you.
But was there a feeling that perhaps you fear UPDF brigade too much? That's why you are not challenging them?
How can a minister fear UPDF, which is a civilian, which is meant to submit to the civilian authority?
Ah. That is a good.
Yes, sir.
Katesh?
Oscar, well, first of all, I know my friend Honorable Peter Ogwang is very, very passionate about sport, because he is not only a minister of sports, but he's an active sportsman. Although I've been interested in him in a particular sport, he has not taken interest. So there is no doubt that most of us believe that he means well for the sector, and he will make deliberate efforts to make sure that, especially for that particular host competition, we are able to succeed. And of course, Honorable Ogwang, you know that for the people of Uganda, this one would be treasonable, that if we have been granted a right host, and then we become shabby in preparations and we lose this opportunity. And I know there are countries maybe who are ready to even throw in a last minute
application.
Offer. I mean, it would be the biggest mistake. My question for Honorable is, because you see, the public sometimes takes a narrative, a discussion, even in Parliament, that may not be the way you have explained. Because for me, the first thing I would wanted to ask you to clarify is that for a tournament like this one, you must be having a checklist of what is expected. So even as you invite these people, I suppose that you would have submitted that out of these maybe 20 checklist issues, this is against each, this is where we are, this is a position on each, so that while they come, they need to say, okay, where is the dressing, whatever, then you start explaining. I thought you would have even against each checklist explained each issue, track, why is it not covered, polls, so that by the time they come, they are just looking at verifying your compliance with the checklist. Because now what you did is that the public out there, and even some members in Parliament, thought that the work has been done, so the whole thing became an alarmist. I think that one falls squarely in your responsibility, that you must be able to avoid unnecessary excitement, because people, Ugandans, they start thinking now we have spent all this money, there is nothing to show. Things are being done in a wrong way. So you have to make sure that you avoid that by supervising this project. Then finally, I think the information that some of us got in Parliament was that there were some attempts to do land grabbing around Namboole. People claim it, then because you are now desperate, you need parking area, you now start paying off people. You know, it is something that is, when people who look at opportunities, you want government to be in a corner, then you say, now for me here I've been a sitting tenant. Now, so for me, I think we have supported as Parliament. We have allocated money. What we don't want to hear on behalf of the people of Uganda is to hear any bad news that, you know, we can easily lose this opportunity. You have to do everything in your means to make sure people are assured, because people are already planning. People are building hotels, are planning to build hotels to benefit from this. But this unnecessary anxiety.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's stop for a quick break, and then after the break, we'll have discussion around the table.
The Capital Gang on 91.3 Capital FM. Capital Gang on 91.3 Capital FM.
Welcome back from the break. This is the Capital Gang. Minister Peter Ogwang in the hot seat. Honorable Katuntu.
Yeah, I think sometimes we don't manage our public relations better. From the explanation of Peter here, looks there was no need for the alarm. Because I've just been looking at the 5 sections or concerns raised by CAF. The one was section 1, it was about the field of play. The pitch should be in excellent condition with clear line markings and well-maintained turf. The athletic track should be covered, blah, blah, blah. Then they talk about section 2, which is supposed to be, I think, the dressing rooms. They were talking about a table, a fridge, a massage table, ball boys and flag bearers rooms. There should be a first aid room with emergency medical requirements, at least 2 fully equipped ambulances. You know, things which couldn't have been there at that time. So when they came in to inspect, they came to inspect a pitch ready for a match in the next 1 hour. And I think they should have explained that we shouldn't be having this conversation. But having said that, there are things, Oscar, which as a country we should do better. And I've talked to Peter here before. As you drive on that bypass, there is a garbage pit around there. Extremely filthy, dirty. And a math guy told Peter, really, how can you host an international event in this garbage? Please. I hope you have addressed that.
That land is not my land. That land is under the management. And actually, Uganda Railway Corporation, that is under Ministry of Works and Transport.
No, but you can't. That can't be an excuse. What Ugandans want is for you to talk with your colleague, the ministry, and say, look here, we can't have this as a garbage pit. Yeah. You guys, anybody who has gone through Namboole would tell you it is terrible. Things like the parking lot being a scrapyard for some dilapidated pieces of ironmongery. They are littered all over the place. I mean,
those are business people. Now you hear the language here.
We shall bring it free, sir.
Let's have one at a time.
Yeah. So to me, I think we can do it better, and I hope you don't get embarrassed that these people come and then they raise other issues. Because what they did, they gave him the checklist, complete checklist. And I hope by this afternoon, everything is in place and we'll get a green light. You know, we go back to the conversation we've just been having earlier. These are issues where you can promote a country. People come and it's like, oh, I need to go back to this country. It is so hospitable. They are, you know, these businessmen are going to reap big, especially those who would be even in the Kateshi sector of tourism. So, Peter, please up your job. We have no doubt that you are very enthusiastic and passionate about sports, but this is the time to deliver. And don't fail Ugandans.
There's a Baguma, yes, Junior. I applaud Peter Ogwang Gwang's effort on getting us ready for games. It's indeed a good thing that one brings in professionals to draw for you a yardstick and so on. But there's a Walter Haggard says, asked Minister Gwang about Akibua Stadium in Lira. The last time he went there with a contractor and held a gathering saying works would begin soon. How far and when is the construction beginning?
Soon.
Soon. And then George E on Twitter says, no. Peter Ogwang, he says some unkind words about you. Then it says, Peter Ogwang said the game against Algeria will be played here in Namboole Stadium on 12th June. That is my promise to Ugandans. Is he still on that promise? Ivan, you're on microphone.
You know, first of all, for me, I want to thank the minister. Because for the first time, you know, before I think, before the Honorable Gwang was Minister of Sports, these complaints about our sports sector existed. So he did not invent them. But then Ugandans were shouting amongst themselves, you know, would be grumbling amongst ourselves on Twitter and things like that. These days, the minister is always on X, pushing back, responding. They are bringing this, he's responding, he's engaging. You know, we might take that for granted, but you have a minister who has skin in the game, who is a sportsman, who is as passionate as the fans themselves, and who feels or who appreciates that he owes accountability to the public or to the citizens that he on whose behalf he acts or presides over the sports sector. Now, whatever the minister said about the readiness of the stadium must have been aspiration or enthusiastic or saying we have timelines. But constructions and usually have challenges in here. I think the point is what Katesh said. If you're bringing, because from what the minister explained, he invited CAF to also assist him in evaluating the project. In my opinion, that should not have been publicized. It should have been an internal exercise as you're evaluating as part of the evaluation, the project monitoring and evaluation exercise. Then after those issues are raised, then you go and work on them. And then finally, or at least when you know the timelines for approval of stadiums, then you give an official report about that. Because like clearly the CAF report that we have seen, the issues raised were minor issues here and there. And yet now we have conflated that with the timelines of the timelines of the completion of the stadium.
Perhaps if CAF speaks, it cannot no longer be silent. If a speak,
for me that is on the minister for bringing CAF publicly, and then because if you are evaluating an exercise, you don't publicize an evaluation, monitoring and evaluation, every stage of monitoring and evaluation. You might want to be transparent, but then you open yourself up for the sort of unjustified criticism. Like the minister has been exposed to. But for me, I want to appreciate first of all the public interest in the stadium. Oscar, there is no. It's long now that it's been long since we were last in CAF. In the Chan, but the last time we were in Chan, there are very few things that unite this country as sports. And so this overwhelming interest in Namboole Stadium should be taken very, very, very seriously, because it's one of those few national events and activities that unite Ugandans across the entire spectrum of all shades. So that is why you see all this interest. But I am glad that the minister is in tune with the public mood, with the public sentiment, and I like that Parliament also understands the tone. There was a public mood. I saw the speaker the other day, and they have released the money. Now the ball is in the UPDF and the Ministry of Works and the sports and the sports unit. So I think for us, we should. The minister can promise when the stadium will be open, but I think for what Ugandans will need, I think the breaking point will be if the stadium is not ready for the games. So for us, I think as Ugandans, those are the timelines we should concern ourselves with. And
I don't know whether you followed the Africa Cup of Nations in Ivory Coast. Those stadia, it was like Europe.
Yeah.
And you must have attended it, Peter. You didn't, but your people must have gone. Yeah, but I can tell you, Ivory Coast made this continent proud.
Yeah.
The way they organized that tournament. The stadium was so beautiful. The fans came to attend in big numbers and so on. So we should have picked lessons from that tournament so that, because there's time for us to also make it as good as Ivory Coast.
And maybe just to conclude for me,
another stadium in that time, but at least for
conclude for me is when we are prioritizing, because by the time Uganda goes to bid for hosting rights, then I assume we must have done an assessment of projected income, projected tourism revenues, projected the broad, the holistic assessment of the gains of such a massive
or works to bring us to standard.
Because hosting that requires a massive investment in stadia, in infrastructure, in everything. You saw what we did for Vietnam, and imagine those were just 3 days of guests, a week of guests here. Now you have a whole tournament. So the question is, does Uganda have the sufficient resources to build that infrastructure and stadia to that level?
Okay.
If we do, have we prioritized it sufficiently? Because even this obsession with Namboole, like the Honorable Katuntu is saying, this is just one single stadium. We have another. I saw the Chigundo. I think that one. I think CAF must have even said. I don't know. I think the Honorable Gwang will speak on that. But if you have a stadium, exactly. So you can't be projecting that the another big stadium you have is that is that, because stadiums must be accessible. You don't have a stadium in the middle of downtown and you say it will be up to the standard.
You mentioned Nam. It's a sore point in our village in Chigo. We blame Katuntu here. Because
they give you roads and
they gave us a traffic light, what we call a Serena traffic light. It stopped on the day after Nam. So there are accidents there. But that traffic light stopped on the day after Nam. So
but it's about bulbs, really. The infrastructure is there.
Yes. As Joshua comes on microphone, I wanted to add on something.
Yeah, something. Because, we are talking about infrastructure. But the minister here, Ugandans are... You've given the example of Ivory Coast. I think as a ministry, you should have, by now, you have maybe parameters that made Senegal special. What makes Chan successful? Number one, you have the infrastructure of stadiums. That one you must give us is a position. There are other things, the national team readiness, the funds support, the environment around, infrastructure, accessibility, hotels, etc. So we are just focusing on the stadium, but what are the other things? What do you want to say? How is the national team?
Traffic management.
Traffic management.
Will the traffic lights work?
Yes.
Have they bought bulbs? So as Joshua comes on,
and as Joshua's people,
paid IFRIS. Have they bought the machines and have power? So Ronnie tells you Okuyiriba is to Katesh. Okuyiriba is to broker. You negotiate a product you don't have in stock and go source from one who has it for a small haircut, he says.
That is very
and then goes on the minister's explanation. This is David in Kampala says the minister's explanation is reflective of poor preparation. Being a minister and a passionate sportsman doesn't make him an authority on stadium issues and CAF inspection standards.
Well, he's just being the spokesperson. I mean, he's not.
Joshua on microphone before Minister Ogwang responds.
Thank you so much. I just want to let the minister know that every time a country wins a bid to host any event, there are other countries, what we call international syndicate, that would have wanted to have that opportunity. Or there are even other events in the future that they are saying that country should never host it again before we do.
Yes.
So there is very heavy interest at the international level for us to manage internal communication. And I want to urge the minister that your
you
communication
make a point. I have someone here called Babu. He says, tell Abdul that Ivory Coast was like Rwanda, not like Europe. Peter Ogwang is going to say he doesn't have funds like of Europe. So use Rwanda, not Europe. Go on, Joshua.
My brother here should have a very tight communication strategy that is very elaborate, very deliberate, to control bad information and then influence the right narratives that should go out. And he should do this on a daily basis. And should be helped by all the other sectors. You know what happens in this country is you have the international play. People communicate because they don't want you to host the event, or they never want it to be successful. Then you have internal syndicate where you have people who don't want it to happen here.
Yes.
Then you also have a coalition of both. People who don't want it to happen here and those that don't want it to happen from outside. They can make a coalition to make it fail. Then you have those who are uninformed. They're just excited. Anything small, they have to stretch it to the rest of the world.
They seem to be the majority.
And they tag everybody. So it becomes viral. It's not the right information. It's because they're not informed. So, one, there should be deliberate points of information from you under control. The narrative is right. Then I also want to come in on the business side. Namboole is surrounded by very small businesses, informal, others don't even have to be there. I think as a holistic approach, we need to start engaging as early as possible. Because by the time you bring a grader to start pushing them away, they're also going to go on X and start saying they'll push my business away. I had 6 kids that I'm paying for, and they'll put my house away. So let's control these narratives. Let's have these engagements and make sure that we inform them on how they're going to benefit. My other maybe question to you that you'll answer is, when such events come, we have actually been putting out information on the events the conference that were there now. We want to have side business engagements, and you find that the people who are in the engagements are still the members of parliament. So no business person in a business engagement, and we are saying, can we have discussions with your ministry so that we onboard the traders? There are businesses that can be done within the stadium. There are businesses that should be done around the stadium. Can we have gazetted places for us to do business, and we know which kind of business? Can we have discussions about the stalls? How do they look like? What investments should we have to be able to be in those stalls, so that holistically people benefit? There are other amenities, the hotels and all that. They need to be given the standards so that they try to upgrade to meet. Otherwise, we'll have an event that will bring in a lot of income, and we'll have people go back with their monies, or they end up in Rwanda. And I also want to tell you that I volunteered in the World Cup in South Africa when I was a teen, and it was very exciting. You see the businesses that were around the stadiums, the transport system from Otambo to go to Joburg. Sandon had a lot of high-end apartments and all that.
That's what it is. Yeah.
And this turned into kind of hotels or Airbnbs for people. Some families moved away from their houses and gave them out. So we need to have this kind of narratives to be able to make things work.
A friend of mine, Oscar, who has said that there is this habit of planting trees a week before the event starts. And if the event is in the dry season, then you start struggling. So if you have to do anything around preparation, you need to start now. Don't wait for the week, then you start.
Even now, it is late to plant a tree.
First of all, I want to thank colleagues and all of us for the questions we have raised. I entirely want to agree with the submission of my brother who represent the business community. Actually, it was one of the issues which was raised. Kiosks around the stadium. They had asked me to provide, according to the first checklist I had with them, about 16. And the construction, the renovation, took into consideration that account. The time they came, we had not opened them up, put them up for them to see. So they found that they had been closed, and were telling them they are here. So what you're saying is true, and I'm going to take it up as a matter of priority so that I get you in touch with the management of Namboole as a business community for us to be able to do business inside there as far as side business is concerned. You're right, we need a communication strategy, and I entirely agree with you. And I don't want to talk about funds, but I have a management in Namboole which is meant to be fully fledged, and I want to say that they are meant to advertise for jobs, a communication specialist for purpose of management of that facility called Namboole, so that each and everything they should have to channel that information out, that what they intend to do, what business they will do, name them. That one is true. The other one, of course, which has come up clearly is that I want to thank my brother Honorable Katesh. As of now, me, I focus on infrastructure. Number two, I also focus on supporting the federations. And when I talk about the federation, I now talk about the Uganda Cruise. And I want to thank you, Parliament. You know very well, we give FUFA to a tune of 17 billion. That 17 billion is the one which prepares the team. And specifically is for the national competitions. And they have almost about 10 teams. So even if you divide the 17 billion into 10 teams, football is very expensive. You find that that money is about 1.7 billion to prepare a team. And now you know world over, a game of football is very expensive actually for payment of players. So a player can say, you're inviting me, how much allowance am I going to play for? There are those now who are being paid much money in their respective clubs. Sometimes some of them even turn down to come and play for the national team because of their club commitments. So I also want again to say that we need to manage that by when I request for additional money to support these federations, we really need to move forward.
But it must start from cabinet, because when you say Parliament, you know these estimates come from cabinet where you sit.
I entirely agree.
So if you don't prioritize them and you come,
I'm going to talk about that. Now there's an issue which is clearly coming out here. We're talking about Cote d'Ivoire. I want to request that Cote d'Ivoire spent $1 billion for organizing of AFCON. Now, if I now begin asking for $1 billion, and by the way, after putting $1 billion, they got $5 billion within 1 month. That's why a return on investment in sports is big. How I wish we have done our part as the ministry responsible for education and sports, trying to put this forward to the planners, that the more infrastructure we invest in, the more we are able to bring in other international competition, which bring in money. No wonder we are now saying, okay, let's have CHAN. You've said CHAN is for September. How much money do we need for CHAN? How many facilities do we need for CHAN? We have agreed that we need a 1 stadium and at least 2 training pitches, which are conform to the international standard. We have 1 training pitch in Namboole, which is with the renovation. So I'm now having a second thing to deliver another 1 or 2 training pitches for purpose of us having CHAN competition here. And by the way, it's the same with the other partner states, that's Kenya and Tanzania, because we all talk to each other.
We just need 1 stadium.
No training pitch, 1 training pitch, because we need minimum of 2 training pitches. Namboole renovation now has 1 training pitch outside and 1 main pitch inside. So that is for purpose of what? For purpose of CHAN. So tomorrow, I am already putting in, and I want to say this, government has already earmarked $4 million into this investment so that we are able to move together to make sure this is, number 1, we put up 3 training pitches. Number 2, we look at some of the additional requirements which CAF has already forwarded to federations which have come to us. The other one which I want to say is, it is true, my brother, you're right. Whoever leaked out the report, it did not come from me, because from my new, it's an evaluation report internal. The report went to Parliament. So when it went to Parliament, it was raised in the floor of Parliament. I had to come in to respond to the issues which were put in the report. And that's why I want to say, but even then, I have picked it in good faith, because it has helped me also secure the 17.6 billion, which was not forthcoming. Because I have been looking for that money for the last 6 months. So that's why for me I said there are those who are jittery, there are those who abuse me. But
let me caution you. You are a minister in the government of Uganda. So if you are crying like us, then
I'm not crying. I'm being realistic to myself. I am not crying. I'm being realistic because let's be honest. When we talk about AFCON now, I want to use the words of my brother. We have committed the government. We must prioritize in terms of funding this. We committed to renovate the national stadium. So we should move with funding. How do you release, let's say, 80% of the money, and now releasing the balance, which should be able to make us achieve the entire 100% completion? Then you begin taking us to, really. So should I keep quiet about that? That is entirely one which I want to say the responsible people must up their games. And I've said this, if we are not ready, then let's be sincere to ourselves sometimes. The other issue was the parking, the grabbing of Namboole land. I want to put this clearly. We have a title as a Minister of Education and Sports for 128 acres, fully secured. We had a tenant in Namboole who was then called Pioneer Buses. Our contract with them, I want to say, wound up and it ended. We requested them to take away their buses because we knew at the end of the day we shall need to use the parking for purpose of the competition. It has been a big issue. And that's why, again, I also want to thank, because if I don't thank them, if my colleagues at Parliament, maybe I would still be struggling by making sure that they get out. But finally, the owner of the Pioneer buses is getting his buses out. And my brother said he's a businessman, true. But I want to appeal to you businessmen that next time don't cause us crises for us to fail to continue with our normal planning, which again bring in more money to you. For instance, now.
But wasn't it a tax issue? Maybe Katesh will remember.
Katesh will talk about it. I don't want to go in there.
Yes.
That is another issue. Let me talk about, you cannot imagine that bus park or that bus parking, all those buses there would be able to deny us revenue. Because now that stadium is a smart stadium by the way. It's no longer the only Namboole. You get a ticket, you can even get a ticket online. You just go there, it tells you this seat number, this gate. You go to that gate, you just scan and you enter. Now I'm sure I will collect money to government directly. Direct from every ticket. That's smart stadium. That's what we want.
Honorable Gwang, these preparations, are they only for the matches this year or moving forward, because we have a big hosting to come?
I'm coming to that.
Do you have a blueprint Katesh style, I was saying?
Yes, I'm
planning for that.
I'm coming to that. For instance, now, during this very inspection, the team from CAF said, as of now, that stadium is a plan of 1972. If you look at its VIP, because of its structural program, planning, it's small. They told me we will need a bigger VIP, which is able to accommodate a big number of guests like you've seen in Ivory Coast. So what does it call? For me, I've already put it in writing. For purpose of 2027, I have the following which are needed. Number one, a big VIP. Number two, I need to cover the stadium. You see it.
Number three, a new stadium.
No, I'm coming to the new stadium. Number four, what I need in that stadium, for instance, for purpose of the media tribunal. Because now, media is the entire business of CAF and FIFA. They told me, if we are taking it the other side, they need a lift. Because they don't want the media to interfere with what? With the funds. And that is recommended by FIFA. So there are some of those issues they said, okay, for the game, if we give you June, there's no problem, Chan, no problem. But the other elite competition, no. We will not approve it if you don't address those standards we're giving you now. So they are also being considerate. So for me, again, I come back to the planners. The last one is Akibwa. It is true. I took.
So just those will be the other stages of the phases.
Phases. Those are the second phase, third phase.
Third phase of the upgrading of the stadium.
Yes. The last one I want to talk about is Akibwa and Hoima. I want first confirm. AFCON 2027, we are going to construct a new stadium in Hoima. And in terms of the stages where we are, the due diligence is being carried out as a government procedure for Hoima. For Akibwa, I took a contractor. They also requested for the visibility reports, which were submitted. Themselves, they came and went back to the stadium to get a topographical survey for purpose of knowing where do they fit in their stadium. And that is done all by the contractor. And I want to tell my people of Lango that we are on course, and the contractor is finalizing in terms of financing, the securing resources to finance that project.
More promises.
And that is not promises.
Final word on
final
the
word
gang.
for me.
You know, time does.
What final word for me? I want to say this: that when I talk, they say I am overzealous. When I keep quiet, they say I'm not talking. We government ministers, we don't want to talk now. When we give timelines, they say we give timelines which are not realistic. Then they begin comparing that this stadium renovation compared to other countries' stadiums. I only want to say the following. Before you begin asking Ogwang or anyone of some of these fundamental questions, it's important you find out, my neighbor, how much has he or she invested in a renovation of a stadium, and how much is Ogwang putting in. Like when I was coming in, someone was insulting me on X here, saying, look at this one. Look at those lights. I want to remind that one, and I know he's listening, a sports journalist. That stadium has been renovated by $165 million. What $1 million? That's a Mahoro. What I'm talking about in Namboole is 97 billion in terms of dollars. Shillings. In terms of dollars, how much money is that? Isn't that about $23 million? So what are we talking about here? So, like, I don't want to use bad words, but I only want to say...
We want to end on a good note. We will keep inviting you, and you give us updates on what's happening. Thank you so much, Minister Peter Ogwang, the sporty one. Thank you so much, our guest. By the way, someone asked quickly. Our guest, Joshua Mawerere, thank you. Chairman, Youth Traders, Kasita, Uganda. Honorable Katesh, Honorable Katuntu, thank you very much.